But I know what are all worries you are having. So it's a very great support, and you are proud. We are proud that such a colleague who has taken care of the family and the job also. Thank you.
I would like to.
I think that Mr. Jalgate has raised a very important point, and
I'd just like to add my own two words that sir made me feel so emotional.
I can see Dr. Zahir Ahmed Saeed also here.
I just want to make 2 points.
Yes, doctor.
See, we are dividing the thing between the psychology and.
No, that was in passing. It was not.
No, but still,
Yeah.
it sort of expresses people here. In any center, which is in any center which treats depression outside this country or even in bigger institutes in this country, the psychiatrist, there's a panel, and each patient comes to the panel, so that the psychologist with his cognitive therapy and the psychiatrist with his medicine get together. We did this a lot in the Institute of Neurology, not for depression, but for epilepsy. I mean, this is on, let's say, 50 years ago, and these are products of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, doctor.
So as far as
Just to clarify, this is we're not trying to make it a toss-up between psychologists or psychiatrists. I think they're both important cogs in the wheel. But again, before I come to you, I want to ask you made copious notes of the book.
Yes, I did.
How would you, as a psychologist, how would you review this book? What was that one aspect of the book that really stood out according to you as a psychologist?
For me, she made every single, she's covered every single aspect of depression according to me. She's covered the vitamin D deficiency, she's covered food, she's covered exercise, she's covered yoga, meditation. I mean, it's completely all comprehensive for me. I mean, there hasn't been a single point that's left out. She's done an immense lot of research. I mean, anybody who wants to know about depression, if this book had been available 10 years ago or 12 years ago, they would have completely understood what they're going through. I mean, even for caregivers, Sanjay, okay, caregivers are clueless as to what happens to a person when they go through depression. So they struggle to cope with that particular person. These days, what we do is we start off with family therapy, where we call the husbands over, we call the parents over to actually explain what a person who's going through depression actually feels and the emotions that they go through. So this book will be a wonderful start for anybody with depression, because it talks about every single thing. I mean, she hasn't left out anything.
There have been very good reviews in the media as well. Times of India calls it an effective primer on depression. Dr. Radhakrishnan, will you recommend this as a textbook in schools and colleges in Tamil Nadu?
It's a very tough question to ask, because I will not be the ultimate. Definitely, the fact is that, having more material. I've been a great proponent of peer-reviewed material, and then a person like Dr. Rao says that this is there, and I have gone through the experts. I definitely believe that this needs to be given a lot more. In fact, the fact is that even in medical education, this aspect has to be covered more. If you look at mental health program, perhaps last year was the first year when we decided to extend it to all the districts. Otherwise, the mental health program was not there. Of course, Tamil Nadu incidentally happens to be only one of the states in the country which has psychologists and social workers. So that itself is a sad reflection that a leading state is the first state which has covered. So definitely these kind of material will be a very good value addition to the MBBS students who are ultimately initial stages they will do. Of course, again like Dr. Rao says, psychologists and also social workers. This is one area where I would like to mention that the contribution which social work people, whether it is Madras School of Social Work or from Kodaikanal, they also do a lot to help people get over it in the initial stages, just like psychologists and of course psychiatrists. So definitely we will keep that in mind.
In a lighter vein, since there's a bit of coercion when it comes to vaccines, maybe this also can be the good coercion for people to take. If you can ask questions, the audience also, yes, in fact, a lot of batchmates of Abi as well in the audience, a lot of senior officers. I'm very glad Mr. Jalgate made that intervention, because although Abi is not here and he's in Bangkok, I think he's a perfect remote control device. The way he has managed to drum up this kind of support, which only shows the affection people have for your family. Yes, sir, there was a hand that went up. Yes. Your children as well who went through all this. And your son, I think, asked you, Mummy, can a person die of depression?
He did. And I have why I'm especially bringing up this is, apart from the fact that of course I'm very fond of my children, is that sometimes maybe we do need to talk to children also about what is happening in small ways in which they can understand. Like when I've written in my book that I explain to them that this is the crying fever. Like they get cold and cough and they get fever. So I have that kind of crying fever. I feel very sad and I cry when I get that fever. So from that was when they were 7 and 5. Now they are 11 and almost 9. So when my son asked me, can someone die of depression? So then I thought that it's time for another class for them. So we sat down, and what really amazed me was this 8-year-old, he's not yet 9. He told me, yes, mommy, there is something called a neuron in the brain. I said, yes, there is. And then he said that there's some space between them, and he was very excited. Electricity jumps from one neuron to the other. So I said, yes, electricity does jump. Then we did that. I took out a walnut and I showed them, okay, the brain looks something like this, and I drew a diagram. I explained to them that these are happy areas, these are sad areas, these are the linkages. So happy areas shrink, they become small, sad areas become. This is the way they can understand. This is at their age, maybe when they grow older. And my older one has been eyeing that book. He's dying to read it, but I've been telling him, no, you have to wait at least till you're 14, maybe 13 or 14. Not because...
so there's parental guidance for this book?
Sort of, because it's my life, it's their life too. So it may be disturbing for them. And that's what I've told a couple of my friends who have children who are 11, 12, 13 who want to read the book. I did tell them that yes, it's nice, but please do it with parental guidance. Because my own story does make for a bit of, even the cases that I've mentioned in the beginning, that do make for a bit of, a grim reading. So children do need to be counseled. And I'd also like to mention that my elder one has gone around telling his whole school that his mother is off on a book tour. And he was very proud when his teacher told his whole class that his mother is a published writer. And his classmates were like clapping or something, so he's very, very, very proud of me. And my younger son, he made me very proud when he's only 8, so he was looking for the D word on the DVD shelves at 7-Eleven. Local 7-Eleven we went and we saw, because the DVDs, the jackets look like books. So his mom asking, Mommy, do you think we'll find the D word here? So I said, no, Bita, we will not find it here. But yes, their support, they are a big, big support to me now that they've grown older. And the book tour would not have been possible. I wouldn't be here if they had not cooperated and been so proud of me.
Just a quick
round of
question.
applause for our children as well.
Shubhrata, this is a quick question for you. Now that you spoke about the genetic factor and you said it played a major role, are you a little worried that your children may, get depression, and what do you plan to do about it?
As you rightly said, I am not just a bit, but I'm quite worried. But then, of course, I'm also very rational, because worrying about it is not really going to help. And my parents don't have depression. My sisters in my immediate genetic group doesn't have depression, but I did develop it. So maybe, and somewhere along the way, it's like 7 generations or something, and I do have a few cousins who do have depression. But then what I can do is maybe equip my children with the same kind of life-saving skills.
I think your book will be the first thing you should be making.
Yeah, and more than the book, I do, there are 2 things I will mention here, because I spoke about this yesterday also when I was talking to Dr. Shambhat. One is that I do CBT with them from time to time. Small things, I'm upset, this happened in school today. So I sit down with them, okay, what happened? Were you angry? Just as Dr. Radhakrishnan taught me. Were you angry? Were you sad? How angry were you? How sad were you? And now they've also, especially my older one, because he's older, so he's able to grasp a little more. So he's able to tell me pat down, Mommy, maybe I was 5 angry on 1 to 10 and 2 sad. So he's able to tell me that much. So I'm trying to do that. Same thing, what would you tell your friends? So this is one thing. Second thing is, my children go to, the second one, my younger one, his teacher is also a big fan of mindfulness. And she has, in the 2nd grade classroom, she has this wellness corner kind of thing, where children, she uses a bell to ground them every day before class in the morning. So that really also helps, and I'm trying to take this further with the mindfulness, telling them that if you feel sad, close your eyes, breathe in and out, and when you breathe out, imagine this cloud which is going out the door, worry on it, fear on it. So that's all I can do, and I always keep pushing them for physical activities. And I'm hoping that maybe by the time they grow up, I would have equipped them with, these life-saving skills. I cannot prevent something from happening. That's not in my hands. but this is what I can do, and that's what I'm trying
And this
to
is
do.
called proactive coping, and I think it's wonderful.
And the benefit of hindsight. Yes, so the gentleman who had a, yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I have one basic question. Like we have two kinds of people who are having depression. One, the person who understands that he is having a depression, he wants to seek medical help, get better. And what about the people who we see that he is having depression, he or she having depression, but they won't accept. And to give them any kind of help becomes much more tougher. So how to deal with those type of people? I can see that even for years of people, family members counseling or friends counseling, they won't accept. But still they can be treated only with like some psychiatric
Just to take off, that's a good point you raised. Is it better to go to confide first in a friend or a family member, or favorite uncle or a cousin? Or is it advisable at the very first instance to go to a psychologist, psychiatrist? I won't get into that. Whoever.
No, I think going to a family member, a close friend is definitely a good option, because immediately you just don't want to be sitting in front of a professional, since there's already a lot of stigma attached to going to a psychologist. Okay, and the second step is once the family member says, okay, I'm not able to deal with this, I'll take you to a psychologist. It's very good, because that person can actually talk to a very non-judgmental, anonymous person. He can confide all of his feelings to that particular person, because they're not related, they are not friends. So when they do this, the other person, the psychologist or professional, will definitely understand what he's going through. I mean, he's not going to judge that person based on what he said. So I think, a friend, confiding in a friend or relative first, and then taking a step by going with them to see a professional is a great way to do it. And the other way is to create awareness. Many people are not even aware of the word depression. We are trying our best as psychologists and psychiatrists to create awareness.
My question is, like, the person who is having depression, they won't accept at all.
Exactly.
Even after the guidance from others, like family members, friends, anybody, what is the solution for that? Like,
I would, if I
You want to answer that,
permit me, I will take that. I'm Dr. Gautam. Okay. Generally, when patients come to me, they have this issue where the person does not accept that he or she has a problem, and the family wants to bring them for treatment. So they ask me, and what I tell them is, get some support. Find out who that person will listen to. I'm sure in their group there is somebody whom they will listen to. Enlist their help. It may take time. Don't be in a hurry to bring them. It may take time, but take your time, convince them and bring them. Tell them, even if they are not willing to come, tell them that you have a problem and that you would like to discuss it, and then get them to us, and then we will take over from there. So this is something answer to your question. With regard to the problem on genetics, I don't think we really have to be worried, because all the mental disorders have a genetic predisposition, as put out in the book, and they all have triggers, and none of us know what the trigger is. When a patient asks me what is my trigger, I tell them God only knows, because I don't. I certainly don't. So there is no way you can predict what the trigger is, but every one of us knows that there are certain stresses that we have to go through, and you try to avoid as much stress as possible, and as Shubhrata has pointed out, do things like yoga, meditation, lifestyle engineering, and have a healthy lifestyle. And that is the best that you can do. What you cannot prevent, you will have to have it treated. Having said that, generally when anybody writes a book, there is a heavy bias. It's either on one therapy or another therapy or some. And I'm really happy that Shubhrata has brought out a wonderful book which gives an all-round picture and a very comprehensive approach to depression. As somebody, I think Minnie put it, kind of depression for dummies. And I think this is very much needed right now. And I'm very happy that she has done this. And I think it will go a long way towards helping a lot of people to seek help. Thank you.
Are there other doctors as well in the audience? Yes, Dr. Chandramohan.
If I could just add
Sure.
one small thing to that question about, people don't accept. Now, of course, one is the immediate approach. What do we do when someone doesn't, accept that they have a condition? But looking at the larger picture, it also has to do with the social stigma. And if we as a society work towards bringing down the social stigma attached to mental disorders, it will be much easier for somebody who's going through a condition or who has a condition to accept that they have this particular condition.
Yes, Dr. Chandramohan had a question.
Mr. Sanjay, we'll just take one question from back and then we'll come back.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
this question is to Sanjay, Pinto, and of course anybody in the panel can answer this. I heard two young girls talk that it was quite glamorous to have depression because Deepika Padukone has it and Charlie Chaplin had it, Parveen Bagi had it. So how are we as a society going to help those victims like in the Kumbakonam fire tragedy or the tsunami victims? How we as a society are going to help them? Because they are the ones who really need it. So as a media person, what's your viewpoint on this?
Okay, former media person, I'm a lawyer now.
But I see
I
you
know
on the
that
TV
doesn't,
very often.
that of course doesn't come up. I think it was Dr. Dr. Gautam's initiative, Dr. Radhakrishnan as well. I remember when the tsunami struck, soon after that, there were very few doctors who were able to counsel people in Sri Lanka. And I think people from Chennai sent a team. I think Dr. Gautam was also involved in that, right? Yes, so to answer that way, would you like to answer that?
See, what happens is that, the earlier in all this traumatic, this thing, it was just going to look at relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction, but off late, perhaps much earlier than that also, when there was a big fire tragedy in Bangalore, this systematic psychosocial support was initiated. And again, how it is done is that, it was not, once the entire thing goes, the initial phase goes, they divided, they trained a lot of, we had NIMHAMs coming in, CMC Vellore. So the best way is to bring in professionals, rather than, just a collector going and speaking or a revenue inspector going and speaking. Best is to hand it over to the professionals. When the professionals come, they did a training of trainers, and I think the World Bank also pitched in. Then they started meeting 25 families at a time. For example, in tsunami, so divided them and then identified the people who needed. So it was more a sort of professional backing to psychosocial support which helped. Of course, generally what happens over a period of time, that doesn't get covered, but that doesn't mean that, I still remember Dr. Mathu Budam, who is now no more. He came for Kumbakonam fight. Tsunami, it was a very professional kind of NIMHAM, CMC Vellore, and the social welfare, social defense setup, where we had a lot of social workers coming in. In Kumbakonam fight tragedy, we had people with psychology background, social work background, and also doctors coming in and doing it. But the challenge with regard to Kumbakonam fire tragedy in particular is, despite all that, it's now more than, it was 2004, and now even then, still we have people carrying that. That scar was something very, very distinct. So we need to continuously, probably the anniversaries or the occasions where they are allowed to vent back this thing. So that kind of thing has to continue. That perhaps is continuing it by the district administration in a very low profile manner. Thank you.
Can I also answer that question for you? Actually, right now I'm in media. I do a lot of programs on television and radio that reaches a lot of people. I think television and radio really do the job for you. I've had so many, a lot of positive feedback as to thanking me, as to, letting them know what depression is, or a panic attack is, or what anxiety is. So I think television and radio are powerful.
I also feel from the national, having come from the national media, I think the national media has failed in its responsibility to actually focus on real issues. There's so much of time devoted to useless political debates, but I think the real issues, and that's one of the reasons why I also moved away from that medium, because I felt it was becoming too superficial. I think this discussion should be covered in all the cities by the national media, even if it's a small story. So to take off from Madam's point there, I think the national media has a big role to play.
Yes, that, and what I would really like to add here is that, well, there is nothing, absolutely nothing glamorous about depression. If you think there is even a small iota of glamour, please do read the D word. It is written only for the purpose of educating people. You will get to know what is depression.
No, sadly, the reason I brought the glamour...
Even if it is Deepika Padukone or Parveen Bagi who get it, they are film stars. Parveen Bagi is no more, she was a film star. And they do have this glamorous persona. But I'm sure when they had depression, they were not what you see on screen. I'm sure they went through what probably something similar to what I did. And I think there's absolutely nothing glamorous about dying like Praveen Babi, a recluse, her body not found for 2 days. And I just see no way, young girls can find depression glamorous. And it would really help if we changed this kind of dialogue at all in the depression forum.
The reference to glamour was because Deepika Padukone spoke about it, everybody started talking about it and made headlines, which it wouldn't have otherwise. That was the Dr. Chandramohan.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, good evening. I am Chandramohan. First of all, I think I have a few words about the book. The way the book starts makes for very, very interesting reading. It speaks about different episodes from different places in different families. It is very difficult to write a book about depression. And especially as a doctor, I personally know that there's nothing glamorous or nothing very interesting about mental health as such. But perhaps her background in advertising, perhaps her command over the language, she gives you a whole series of anecdotes which each and every reader can relate to. Yes, this happened in my house, it happened in my neighbor's house, it happened in my relative's house. So then she sets the stage to sort of draw from those episodes as to how they can start off or put somebody into depression. Then goes on to speak a little more technically about the types of depression and various manifestations of it. And let me tell you, mental health is today a very, very, very important issue that we simply refuse to talk about. Whereas the health-seeking behavior which we speak, if I have a toothache, I run to the dentist. If I have a fever, I go to a doctor. If I have a fracture, I go to an orthopedician. But somehow, many of us do not realize that there are manifestations of mental illness which are also an illness like any other. They are curable. They are also problems that can be addressed. Many of us feel that there is something wrong with you because you are feeling like that, or the circumstances or the surroundings are forcing you to respond like that, therefore the surroundings are to blame. True, very true. But ultimately the impact these things have on the person is real. It is also now, psychiatry and psychology as a science have now come up, and they say, though the triggers can be internal, external, and also from the ecosystem, the manifestation happens through neurochemical transmitter substances. Actually, these substances give the manifestation in the person, and these are very true. They can be tremors, they can trigger crying, they can trigger aggression, the person can have suicidal tendencies, all things over which the person does not have control. If somebody says, be alright, take care, have a positive attitude, that will not suffice. It will not help the person to get out of it. So it has to be a combination of various kinds of support systems and interventions that holistically lead to an improvement in the person's capabilities. What this book does is try to bring the various approaches that Shubhrata has gone through, and in the process, one of the few people who has successfully come out of depression. It tells you about the various things that she went through and then what worked and what did not work for her. I like the particular sentence that you said. For different people, different things work. For medicines, for example, I have personally seen many people, as soon as they are put on antidepressants, the side effects they are not able to tolerate. And it is not easy, especially for people in small towns and villages, to access psychiatric or psychological help. So, staying in cities, situation is much better. This book sort of gives you some kind of single point access to the whole subject, to the possible manifestations of depression, to the possible solutions that are available, and where you can seek solutions for these problems if you or your friends or somebody in your relatives face it. To that extent, I must congratulate you for taking up this initiative and doing a very good job. Avi has been a very close colleague. I fully second what Jangit sir was mentioning. A very caring person, a very professional officer. He is a rare combination of professional excellence and personal caring. In fact, a few days ago, I had an opportunity to spend some time with the family, and it was wonderful to see how that whole family bonded and gave out with very, very positive vibes. I don't want to say anything more because it's at a personal level, but congratulations, very well done, very nice book, and I'm sure it will go a long way in making many people feel comfortable about the D word. Thank you.
I just feel that Dr. Chandra wants to speak more often in the media.
I have a question. I'm very problem, not related to anybody. You talked about the genetic manifestations and the predispositions to depression. I just want to ask a question, not just to you, but to everybody else. How important is the early values and systems and expectations and aspirations that we build into our children? Right? How important is it that these act or become triggers for depression, even though they are doing quite well in their lives? Like the thing that you noticed said that आपका तो सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा है, right? So why? Right? The world sees you that way, but the child does not see it that way. Okay? So when you're talking of a genetic disposition, yeah, true, people say that genetic disposition should not be a marker for behavior, but some people can take it and come to terms with it. Some people, when genetic dispositions are not so strong, succumb to depression. This is my layman's understanding of depression. So my question is very different. We talked about tsunami, we talked about Kumbhakonam. Those are identifiable facts. Okay? Disasters for which action can be taken. But what about the thousands of people, children, who see so much in the media, right? And who have aspirations, and the aspirations, unfortunately, and mistakenly and unknowingly, are built into them by the parents, the relatives, and the family, and the environment in which they grow up. So how do you handle that? From your own experiences, from the experiences of the doctors, and from the experiences of the media people themselves. When you say that Deepika Padukone had depression, right? I see the positive. If there is a young girl who says that Deepika Padukone is got depression, it removes the stigma. She will come out and say, yes, if Deepika Padukone can have depression, so can I. And we can cure it. We can handle it. Right? And if you say that Parveen Bhabi had it, yes, at that point of time there was no one like Deepika Padukone was brave enough to come out. How many girls are brave enough to come out? Okay? That is the question that I want to ask.
You've asked about 5 or 6 questions.
I know. I tend to go on and on.
But very profound. You said layperson, but you're very profound. Would you like to answer his question?
As you said, too many questions.
Yes.
But I don't know if I'll be able to answer all of them, but I can only give my own perspective on the issue. While it is true that, as we discussed, that there may be some genetic predisposition, but for depression or for any gene, like even for cancer, people say that the gene is there. But for the gene to manifest itself, there has to be some trigger. The trigger can be anything. It can be, like as I said, it can be internal or external, something in the environment, something which happens. And why it happens, again, like Dr. Gautam said, we don't know. If you ask what triggered it, nobody really can say. But there are the usual suspects. And probably in my own case, I would say it was a hormonal change, postpartum. So probably that is where it started. And once the changes are there, we also need to understand that once the brain changes, it's very difficult to snap it back into place. You know, it's very, very difficult. It may not even be possible. And some recent research has pointed towards meditation and exercise, and especially a combination of the two. And even psychotherapy to some extent, causing changes in the neural pathways in the brain again. I don't know, I'm a lay person as much as you, as far as the neurology of the illness is concerned. But this is what I have read, this is the research. So that is one part of it, that what can manifest, what can be a trigger. And when it comes to children, putting pressure on a child to perform may create psychological stress. And psychological stress, as we have discovered, is a trigger, can be a trigger. Why it happens, again, we don't know. Probably it is because of excess cortisol secretion, and that there's this theory that it causes some of the brain structures to decrease in size, and therefore those functions get impaired. Well, there is another body of research which says that people who have depression probably are born with those smaller structures. So a lot of things are very fluid there. But from what I gather from what you said, from my understanding, is that can we try to prevent a trigger from happening? Can we sort of not put pressure on children so that whether they have a genetic disposition or not, we don't know. The genes don't come, printed on our foreheads. We don't know who has what gene. So yes, if we can avoid psychological stress altogether, yes, it would be a great thing, because we are then eliminating one trigger. But that's only one trigger. I did not have that kind of psychological stress. I developed it because of hormonal changes. I cannot stop it. I cannot not, have a family because I may develop depression. That's not the way I would like to look at life. So that also has to be kept in mind, because a lot of times depression may not be preventable. When you don't know what causes the illness, how can we really, figure out how we can prevent it? But yes, of course, if we can help our children cope with the pressure, not put pressure in the first place, yes. But sometimes it's not possible, because we as parents also play certain roles in their life, but we are not their entire life. They have their peer pressure, they have teachers, they have so many things. They're exposed to so many different kinds of things. So we cannot act as a filter all the time. But yes, maybe we can equip them to handle the stress better. That would work. And I totally take your point on Deepika Padukone maybe destigmatizing, maybe I wouldn't say glamorizing, but I would agree definitely with destigmatizing, because people do feel that, okay, if someone like her can have it, maybe if I have it too, it's not such a bad deal. But then I still feel that we do have to go much beyond celebrities talking about their disorders. Because again, we also tend to say that they are celebrities, their life is so different from ours, we are not on the same level. So it works both ways. I'm not sure how much of a positive influence it has, how much of a negative influence it has. And I would say that more than someone coming up and saying that, okay, this is it, more information about the disorder, about mental health issues in general would go a longer way.
I would like to, if I may, I would like to supplement that, Shubhrata, just very quickly.
Yes.
I think I have understood your question in a different manner. I think you're talking of whether values have anything to do with depression. I think basically, in a nutshell, what is happening is parental expectations of the children, expectations of the school from their children, create huge pressures. I get burnouts coming 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th standard. Today, you have IIT JEE training starting in 7th standard. How ridiculous is that? I have parents bringing their 3-year-old child saying, he's not as bright as the other children, what should I do?
You also have admissions closed for 2020 in schools.
Yeah. So yes, you are right. Parental expectations can trigger depression.
Do we have time for one last question? We can take one. Yes.
Ma'am, I'd like to thank you very much for bringing on this book, because I've been a victim of the T-word from the time I was 13. Like you said, hormonal changes every stage of my life. Postpartum, I've been through it all. I've seen so many psychiatrists. But what really worked for me and what I was really impressed about in your book was the internalizing CBT. You practice it on yourself, you keep convincing yourself again and again and again, and that's what I think really worked for me too. I've been on antidepressants, I've tried everything, like you say in the book, I identify so much with you. And what worked for me was that, and thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for sharing your story with us. because that's another D story that we're hearing here today. And thanks for your, your hats off to you for your courage to sit here and talk about the D word just as I did. That's because of you.
I think there can be no two opinions about this, that Shubhrata Prakash has become the brand ambassador for destigmatizing depression in India, period.
I hope God just one more thing. The thing about whether the psychologist is important or the psychiatrist is important, it's a very individualistic thing, right?
Absolutely.
It's like whether the chicken came first or the egg came first. Every experience is individualistic. You can't give a concrete answer to that.
Even as far as antidepressants are concerned, like we've talked about it, that 30% of the people benefit from the first line, maybe another 30% benefit from the second or third or fourth line, and then at the end of the day, probably there are some 30 to 40% people who do not benefit in any way from antidepressants. But then if you are in the lucky 30%, why not? It helps you get better. If you are even in the second 30%, still, why not? It helps you get better. But if you are in the 40% to which I belong, you have to really struggle to find out what helps. And as you said, CBT, yes. Again, my opinion only, I don't know what the specialist would say. But from my own experience, I have seen this, that as I said, everything will be fine in my environment. No stressor, nothing. I'll be just sitting here quietly, nicely, happily, and then suddenly something will, it may be just a television jingle, it may be some music, it may be some word somebody says, or it may be just nothing. I may just be sitting there and suddenly I'll find those ruminating thoughts coming. So as you said, CBT, yes, it now helps me to catch that immediately. Okay, I'm going into the ruminating.
I call it the delete button in my head, like the computer, I just hit the delete button.
Yeah, it is absolutely right. So it is something like that. And I think probably that happens because of the changes in the neural circuits. I don't know, maybe.
There's always a maybe.
Yeah, which cannot be changed back immediately. So what you can do is, you have to live with it. And how do you live with it? By some way of rationalizing the negative thoughts that those impaired circuits give rise to.
Not to prolong this further, just very quickly, just taking from what
yes, Doctor, you are the expert. That's what I'm saying.
What we do in our center, as you rightly pointed out, is we identify who responds quickly to antidepressants, who requires therapies, and then we do cognitive therapy and counseling at our center. So some of them require just medicines, and as far as medicines are concerned, just one point, the choice of medicines is very important. If you choose the medicines properly, there will be hardly any side effects. In my experience, most of my patients hardly have any side effects. And we identify those people who have to go into CBT or other counseling. There are some people who just need to ventilate. You don't really need CBT for them. So we put them on counseling, and those who really need CBT, we put them on CBT or DBT or one of the therapies.
Rest of the queries can be taken one-on-one after the...
But if I may just take 2 minutes
sure.
to thank a lot of people who are here today, because Chennai is a place I have lived here for very long, and I have a lot of personal relations with a lot of people here, seniors of my husband, my own seniors, and there's so many of our seniors in the civil services, and I just want to thank each and every one of you. And there are some other people standing right behind there. I want to take their names too, because probably nobody ever really talks about them. Murli, Khalil, Babu, Kannan, and there's another person, Kalyan. They've all been associated with my husband, and they've really helped my husband and me in bringing up our children, in sort of surviving day-to-day life with Pinto. So I really need to say a very big thank you to them. They're all there. And there's just a couple of names I also want to take. One is my friend Ramapriya Raghavan, who's here, and I'm so happy that she's here. She's come all the way from Mumbai. She was to come tomorrow, but she's come today just to be with me. She's also there in the book, although I haven't taken her name for many reasons. And she was there with me in the mid-career training program. I wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for her. She was there with her support. And of course, Neeraj, you were there in the book too. Mr. Neeraj Govil, he is one of the reasons the D word exists, because the book was there within me, but I needed someone to help me get it there on paper. And it's because of Ms. Neeraj also, because of them that you have this beautiful cover, which my publisher designed, and it was printed by them. So just maybe a round of applause to Neeraj. Thank you to everyone who came here. A personal thank you to each and every person who's supported me in every small, big, momentous ways that they have done. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, panelists, for that wonderful and detailed discussion on the D word. I would request Managing Director Mr. T.S. Ashwin of Odyssey to present mementos to Chief Guest Mr. J. Radhakrishnan, Dr. J. Radhakrishnan, I'm sorry. Mr. Sanjay Pinto, Dr. Mini Rao, author Mrs. Shubhrata Prakash. On behalf of Odyssey and Pan Macmillan, we would like to take this opportunity to thank Chief Guest Dr. J. Radhakrishnan, Mr. Sanjay Pinto, Dr. Mini Rao, and author Mrs. Shubhrata Prakash for being here with us this evening. We would also like to thank all of you for making this evening memorable. We hope you have enjoyed the event as we have done hosting it. We have books for sale here. You can pick it up and get it autographed from the author. Thank you very much. Have a great evening ahead.
One thank you, I just missed out. Thanks to Ashwin for getting us all together here. Thank you very much, Ashwin.